Okay, so overnight, the entire chessboard of the Middle East was just completely upended. What has been a cold war of words and proxy fights for decades has just exploded into open conflict. So we're going to break down exactly how we got here, who the key players are, and what the next move might even look like.
And right here, this was the first huge signal. See, this wasn't just any strike. It was a public announcement of a long-held, but, rarely spoken, U.S. foreign policy goal: regime change in Iran. This quote, aimed directly at the Iranian people, was basically the match that lit the whole fuse.
Okay, so what actually went down on February 28, 2026? What was the moment that tipped this whole volatile region over the edge?
Well, at 2:30 in the morning Eastern Time, Operation Epic Fury kicks off. And look, this wasn't some small targeted mission. No, this was a massive, coordinated assault by air and sea. We're talking hundreds of jets and missiles, and they weren't just hitting military bases, they were going for the command and control centers, the leadership bunkers, the very heart of the Iranian regime.
The first reports that started trickling out of all that chaos were just staggering. And it was this one number that sent shockwaves everywhere: 40. 40 senior Iranian officials, from military commanders to top political leaders, were reportedly killed in just the first few hours of the attack.
And this just perfectly lays out the strategy, right? It's a decapitation strike. President Trump himself confirmed that the supreme leader was killed. The idea was, cut off the head of the snake and hope the body dies. But here's the thing, and it's a crucial point. The IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they're the real power. And a snake with a lot of heads? Well, that's a whole different problem.
Okay, so that's the what. Now, let's get into the why. What was the official reason for such a dramatic, high-stakes attack? The White House was actually pretty blunt about it.
So the administration laid out these 4 really ambitious goals, and what's so wild is how they build on each other. You see, it starts with a pretty standard military goal, right? Take out their missiles, their nuclear program, but then it escalates, all the way to a public call for a full-blown revolution. This wasn't just about disarming an enemy. It was an open invitation for the people to overthrow their own government.
Okay, so how did they justify this legally? Well, this was the groundwork. Basically, the White House dusted off these old executive orders, classifying Iran as an unusual and extraordinary threat. This was the official legal foundation for a preemptive strike. But a lot of international law experts are saying, whoa, hold on, arguing it's a really shaky legal foundation that could set a dangerous precedent.
All right, so let's shift gears to the immediate aftermath. Iran's leadership is in chaos. How did they respond? Well, the answer came incredibly fast and on a massive scale.
So Iran's retaliation wasn't just, one single act of revenge. It was more like a swarm of missiles and drones unleashed across the entire region. The whole Middle East basically became a war zone in just a matter of hours, a web of fire and steel.
And just look at this. The sheer scale of this response is mind-boggling. From the Mediterranean to the Arabian desert, air raid sirens were just blaring. People in major cities like Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were scrambling for shelters. This wasn't just an attack on U.S. bases anymore. It was an attack on the whole U.S.-backed security system in the Middle East.
But here's something that's really fascinating about all this: how some of these attacks were stopped. Over the UAE, the advanced THAAD defense system was actually filmed knocking missiles out of the sky. It's just a crazy reminder of the level of military tech on both sides of this. It's like this high-stakes, high-tech cat-and-mouse game being played out in the skies over some of the most important economic centers in the world.
So this all brings us to the real heart of the debate, right? The official reason for the attack versus the huge risks that all the geopolitical experts were pointing out.
And right here, you can see the 2 completely different stories of this crisis just smashing into each other. On one hand, you've got the White House saying, look, this was a necessary preemptive strike. We had to do it to stop a clear and present danger. But on the other hand, you have this chorus of seasoned analysts basically screaming, you can't just bomb a regime out of existence. This could be the start of a long, bloody mess.
Okay, so the first shots have been fired. The region is on a knife's edge. What are the immediate costs, both human and economic? And what does the future even look like for a Middle East that has been changed literally overnight?
The fallout was just immediate and chaotic. And as always in war, the first victims were civilians. Families were torn apart, global travel ground to a halt, and this really deep sense of uncertainty just fell over everyone.
Because with Iran's leadership in pieces, who's actually calling the shots? And what do they want now?
You know, this quote from security expert Max Boot just nails it perfectly. It's a lesson we've seen play out over and over again throughout history. And as the entire world just holds its breath, that lesson is hanging over this whole conflict with a profound and terrifying weight.
And really, this is the question we're all left with. The initial shock might be over, but the aftershocks, they're just getting started. And this isn't just about the future of Iran or the Middle East. No, this is about the future of the entire global order. The world is watching and waiting to see what happens next in what someone has already called the biggest gamble of the 21st century.